Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Net General bringing you another Total War Warhammer 3 Legendary Lord lore video, and today we are going to be looking at Kugath Plaguefather, Fetid Brewmaster, Rotting Poxmaker, Plague Weaver. Kugath serves the god Nurgle, the god of pestilence, decay, despair, death, and rebirth. He first emerged in the Warhammer world at the time of the Great Incursion, when chaos first exploded into the realm, while Kairos Fateweaver was bringing down the temple cities of Lustria. Kugath ended up in the northern part of what is now referred to as the Old World, fighting his way down through the mountain ranges of that territory. The race he seemed to encounter most was that of the dwarves, and he soon took a dislike to the stunted things, and began a campaign against their holds and carracks. As leader to a great host of demons, he washed over their territories. The dwarves, however, defended every hill and crag with all of the stubborn tenacity of their race, but they never faced a foe like this before, and soon the demons began to take their territory bit by bit. The dwarves, however, did form a stubborn resistance, with chaos being unable to subvert the magic of their runes, and their warriors being led by the heroes who would later go on to be recognized as ancestor gods. The demon tide was relentless, however, and one by one the dwarf fortresses fell. In the northern mountains, 1,000 unstoppable bloodletters scaled the walls of Khazad-Clad, drowning the keep's stones in the blood of the Dawi. The twin bastions of Karak-Garaz and Kaz-Bryn held off Kugath's legions for nearly a month, but even stubborn dwarves could not resist Nurgle's pestilent curse forever, and with a polluted water supply that brought disease to the Karak, half of its population soon faded away, and the Karaks fell promptly after. The walls of Khazad-Kal found themselves shattered by sorcerer's fire. The defenders of Khazad-Gron held out, but their greed got the better of them, as Slaneshi demons in the force managed to lure them out with the promise of gold, where they were soon set upon with claw and talon alike. Soon enough, Kugath found himself at the walls of the mighty Karaz-Karak, what is now the capital of the Dwarven Kingdoms. Taking no time to replenish his troops, he launched an attack, although his horde at this point had been greatly reduced. It was still vast in number, nearly beyond counting. As Kugath approached the mighty Dwarven fortress, he found the outer gates completely abandoned. Assuming the foe had broken and was scouring in the deeper mountain within, he led his forces onwards. Into the tunnels of Karaz-Karak they ventured, into the pillared caverns that the dwarves had created surrounding the Everpeak. Little did he know that having drawn his forces in, the Dawi had a plan. They shattered the pillars supporting the mountain above and brought the mountain down on the entire demonic horde below, completely obliterating it and sending them back to the realms of chaos. To this day, Kugath hates the stunted Dawi. He hates their stubborn resistance to disease, the gifts of Nurgle, and he hates that they humiliated him at Karaz-Karak, and he has sworn of vengeance on their entire people. In the year 101 of the Imperial calendar, some 2,400 years before the start of the Total War Warhammer timeline, he got his chance as he returned to the mortal realm, as part of a huge demonic invasion of the World's Edge Mountains. This horde in particular had many leaders, but Kugath had his own forces, and he had only one thing in mind, as he made a beeline for Karaz-Karak to avenge his previous humiliation. As he lay siege once more to this vast mountain fortress, he threw every contagion ever to curse the world at the Dawi, eventually breaking their first line of defense, going on to break another two. But time was against Kugath as he struggled to sustain his demonic force in the mortal realms. He eventually shattered two more layers of the dwarven defenses, but the dwarves stubbornly held. With 4 more layers remaining, his army could no longer sustain itself, and its numbers started to dwindle, as the dwarves lashed out against the demon horde, with King Stormy Axehand himself banishing Kugath back to the realms of chaos. He returned to the mortal realms once again in the year 1316, so some 1,200 years before the Total War Warhammer timeline, and in this case, he was part of a great wager. The Chaos Gods had made a wager over the taking of dwarven holds. The holds in question were Karak Mar, Karak Nol, and Dok Duraz, which all fell. Nurgle sent his trusted servant Kugath to take Zufbar, but the thorn in his side, the Dawi, caused him trouble yet again. Their well-placed war engines rained down fire on the demonic forces, and reinforcements from Karak Kadrin foiled his plans yet again, losing Nurgle the wager. And as such, Kugath found himself banished to the Forge of Souls for a time, as punishment for his failure in the eyes of his master Nurgle. By 1401, Kugath again emerged into the realms, this time avoiding the Dawi it seemed, and making common cause with Uzul Skulltaker, causing a swath of destruction across the realms of Bretonnia. Defeated only by a rallying force of some 50-odd villagers, led by Sir Griff Everbill, and found himself returning to the realms of chaos yet again. By 1775, Kugath found himself in Naggaroth, fighting off an army of Dark Elves, led by Khar Drownwrath. He was defeated, but not before he succeeded in spreading a virulent plague of nauseating shackle rot that would go on to decimate half the population of the region. In the year 2520, he was summoned to Nurgle's side and sent on a task. Kairos Fateweaver had launched a campaign against one of Nurgle's favoured cities, the city of Musion. And Nurgle was not about to let a servant of Tzeentch take one of his treasured locations in the mortal realm, and so sent Kugath at the head of a massive Nurgle horde to stop him. The two demonic armies clashed at the gates of the city as Kugath fought his way to Kairos Fateweaver himself. The two clashed, but Kairos' weakness to the present seemed to play against him as Kugath smashed the Lord of Change into a feathered ruin. Turning back towards the city in the moment of triumph, he was pierced by a dozen blessed spears of Bretonnian knights who had continued to fight both hordes of demons, for they made no distinction between the two. And that was his latest excursion into the immortal realms, bringing him in line with the Total War Warhammer timeline. Kugath is the most willing of Nurgle's demons to enter the physical realm, as it allows him to search for more plague reagents he can find, more ingredients for his concoctions and his experiments. And he's made many interesting discoveries in his research. He's discovered that a few drops of mortal blood can turn a quiescent pox into a raging pandemic, and that Skaven bladders increase the virulence of the red pox 100-fold, and while other great unclean ones are content to spread existing plagues, Kugath prefers to cook up new, ever more virulent ones, with the goal of breeding a contagion so terrifying that it could infect the gods themselves. Kugath carries out his experiments deep within Nurgle's decaying mansion, where he keeps his specimens, mortal and demon alike, in its dank chambers. His obsession with the pursuit of creating this perfect plague means he cares very little for anything other than his great work. He takes pride in this detachment, and gives little thought to the shifting balance of power within the realms of chaos. However, he does play his part in the great game, as his experiments are nothing without practical results, and by his eagerness to always test his fresh creations on the battlefield, he brings ever greater glory to his master Nurgle. The Plaguefather himself rides on a massive palanquin, bedecked with alchemical paraphernalia, vials full of seething powder, flasks of indescribable liquid, and Hessian sacks stuffed to bursting with Nurglings. This great bulk of contraptions and the Great Unclean One himself is held aloft by a carpet of straining Nurglings, whilst Kugath is attended by countless others, for he himself is infested with the little creatures, and they often burst forth from his body. His Nurglings are not merely servants, however, but are bred from the Plaguefather's pox vats. As such, they provide excellent ammunition to hurl at his enemies, exploding on impact, drenching the target with disease-ridden fluids. Kugath observes the results of each pox, and should they perform as expected, he gurgles with a proud father's delight. If the results do not meet approval, however, Kugath immediately brews a refined version of the plague, dunks a fresh Nurgling, and lets fly once again. As such, the Plaguefather acts as a huge moving piece of artillery on the battlefield. That is how he will be playing in Total War Warhammer 3 as he leads the forces of Nurgle into the mortal realms once again, no doubt to take his revenge against the Dawi and any others who stand in his way, as he looks to build up his sample and create ever more deadly and disgusting diseases. And that's about it from Kugath in terms of his lore. Let's take a look at how he played on the tabletop. Now, I don't believe Kugath ever got a model, so people were left to do their own conversions. But as far as his rules went, he was a level 1 wizard in 8th edition. He, of course, had hatred for the dwarves. He had poison attacks, caused terror. You also have the rule Slime Trail. Now, although that does sound pretty disgusting, what it meant on the tabletop was that he would not take any kind of battle result negative by being either flanked or attacked in the rear. So that would be interesting if they implement that rule as it is in Total War Warhammer. And of course, he had his Nurgling infestation. This meant on the tabletop that if there was a unit of Nurglings around him within 6 inches, he could heal them of 1 wound every turn. And he had his Nurgling necrotic missiles, him hurling these poor little beggars through the sky, and they come crashing down into the ranks of the enemies. This just meant that he had the same rules as a stone thrower on the tabletop, but there was no misfire, so he couldn't ever sort of cause himself any damage with hurling his Nurglings about. But that is Kugath Plaguefather, one of the mightiest of the great unclean ones, an ever-loyal servant of Nurgle. Can't wait to get our hands on him in Total War Warhammer 3, but that is about it on him. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright, guys? Bye.